Hello everybody and welcome to Amphlett Reviews, and today we're doing the sequel and follow-up to the Heroes trio, The Executioners, released in 1993, directed by Johnnie Too and Ching, who's also behind the Swordsman movie, which he did there, and he's done a few other collaborations with Johnnie Too, done a few other kind of partnerships with other directors. I think Johnnie Too and this other director has also done very similar kind of solo projects, but also done some collaborations along the way. So very interesting. It makes sense to do both these films back to back, and you know, two very different types of movies, two different types of productions, so close together with a lot of the same cast and crew, with a few other tweaks and turns here and there. It makes sense to kind of share the load a little bit with the second entry in the film. So the fact that there was a second film in this so close together is pretty ballsy. The fact they were so confident to make these films back to back, and it's bizarre as well because this film's very, very goddamn different. The Executioners is a completely different film. This is what I was saying with the first review I did for the Heroes trio, was that was such a departure from what I know Johnnie Too can be in terms of a wushu kind of fantasy level superhero kind of movie. It was very colourful, it was very kind of fun, it was full of energy, it was like, you know, massive sparks of life. It was like a proper, like, you know, fun ride from start to finish. R-rated a little bit. There's definitely some violence in places and some really creepy kind of practical effects and some pretty nasty violence, but it was like sort of like a DC sort of level kind of, you know, Hong Kong movie. It was pretty ballsy kind of thing, and to establish these characters and have a form like of a team, and there's some twists and turns with being sisters and kind of, you know, love interest, that kind of stuff, and, you know, identity crisis and all that typical kind of superhero stuff, but just approached in a really fun, really creative way. And I really enjoyed that first entry. The second one is a very different film because this is set within the far distant future. A nuclear apocalypse has happened. This is a Mad Max interpretation of that world. It's set, I think, a good, a couple of years, 5 years, I think 5-6 years down the line, I believe. And this is a very different film completely. This is a lot more cynical. This is a lot more darker. Its humor is very oddly kind of delivered. Its kind of approach to the material is very different. It's about a story about freedom fighters, kind of, you know, you've got the government, you've got this kind of faceless monster, you know, a Phantom of the Opera type villain, played by Anthony Wong, which was one of the villains in the first movie. He was the flying guillotine kind of villain guy. And this one, he's the straight up kind of, you know, Phantom of the Opera villain with a mask kind of, and he's the one running the operations. He's trying to steal water, he's trying to control the water population because resources, water, food have all gone really dry, and this town that we've come to know and love in the first movie is basically just an apocalyptic wasteland with civilians, and you've got the general and the governments that are doing their kind of scheme on. You've got the police force, which have become kind of like rebel freedom fighters now kind of thing. They're keeping the peace, they're keeping the resources going, they're doing the missions going out there and trying to find the water supplies. And you've kind of got our hero trio, which has basically been disbanded, been departure, and that's the appropriate way to do a kind of a traditional superhero movie. You go one way or the other. You'd either do them split up for various reasons, or you do the next entry in that chapter kind of thing. So they've all been kind of split up, they're all doing their own individual things. But they kind of come across each other when they can. They start to slowly team up again as the movie goes along. Executioners is definitely a lot more appropriate to Johnnie Too's kind of style, on what I know of him in terms of his kind of writing and his kind of visual style. And The Executioners is a very strange entry to me because it very much feels like a third entry in the series, not a second one. It's pretty ballsy. It's pretty kind of, you know, out there to go, yes, we're going to do nuclear apocalypse, the you know, Mad Max style end of the world type of, you know, storyline, and do a lot more of like kind of a grounded base story, because this isn't kind of supernatural, mystical kind of stuff. This is very much like a character drama, you know, more politics, more kind of, you know, people involved in the stuff, you know, actual tragedy happening, people dying in various different ways, and people being manipulated and exploited. And, you know, it's definitely a lot more politics heavy in this one, and it's definitely more about the resources and trying to get this water. And all three of our main kind of characters that we know and love definitely are a bit divided in that kind of sense. You know, you've got the thief catcher, which Maggie Chung, she's going out there, she's trying to do her best to kind of help the people, and she's very arrogant, she's very kind of like, you know, a bit salty, and she's just doing her own thing. She's gone back to being solo again. She's staying at home. She's got a daughter now, which, you know, I think she was pregnant maybe in the first one, or was hinted towards being within the first one, and she's got a 5-year-old daughter now, and she's kind of staying at home looking after her daughter, while the police sergeant is out there, the leader of the resistance kind of fighters in that sense, you know. So he's very much more aggressive in this one compared to he was in the first one. I think in the first one he was a lot more supportive, he was a lot more kind of like, you know, he's willing to kind of accept a few more things. I think this one, I think time has not been the best, you know, help to him. I think he's definitely a lot more on edge. He's definitely a lot more kind of duty bound in the sense of what the story is asking of him and kind of thing, and he just doesn't want anything. He doesn't want his wife to get involved, to bury that persona, look after my daughter, look, and we've got to survive, we've got to work together and survive. And, considering most of her screen time in the film is with the daughter and her just kind of going through the paces of trying to maintain this kind of relationship and the relationship between her sisters and the kind of the various people that she comes across in the film, and she doesn't become Wonder Woman. He kind of late end of the second act into the third act when shit goes down, kind of thing, which makes sense. It does work quite well in the film. Also got Michelle Yeung's character, the Invisible Woman, which is again that ability, that idea of her being the Invisible Woman is kind of thrown out the window. She never uses that. The vial was never brought up. The Professor character, I don't believe is in the film. I like to think it's the character that is mutated and got the hunchback, because there's a character in the film that basically is like a solid protector of her, and there's a lot of focus on that specific secondary character. Now, I don't know if anyone can confirm that or not, if I'm completely misreading that, I don't know. I did watch a dubbed version of the actual film, so it's hard to tell if that character was the same Professor character in the first one, maybe mutated, I'm not sure, but there's a lot of focus, a lot of kind of attention between those two on the screen, and it makes sense if it would be. So yeah, you got all three characters doing various different things, and they've got their own duties, they've got their own kind of sub-stories alongside the kind of the politics and the main bad guys also. So you're probably wondering, Andrew, what do you think of the Executioners? I thought the film was actually pretty solid. I thought it was pretty good. Well, it is quite simple in the regard of just finding water and kind of people wanting to take power and control of the city and over the world kind of thing, but it's just convolutedly kind of told, and what it has different kind of themes thrown in, different sub-stories, and it's just not well presented in places. It kind of gets a bit kind of lost within its kind of second act, but it kind of finds its footing again once the mission gets a bit more clearer, once the objectives are a bit more kind of established in the film. There is some fantastic sequences. I love the scene within the train sequence when people are trying to get out of the city, and you got this really kind of epic, kind of like almost like Untouchables kind of sequence with this kind of really sad music and the characters being killed, and it's really like gorgeously kind of presented in terms of like the villains with the mask and the smoke and characters' faces, the shocking nature of it. But some great sequences throughout that isn't just fight sequences, but also just good character-based moments, which not something I would have expected for a second entry in this franchise. I would have thought this would be a third one leading up to that kind of epic climax. Maybe it could have been another two-parter. But surprisingly, when the Wonder Woman character does come back in the film, and she does have this epic kind of sword, duel out fight kind of sequence on top of the famous kind of like the bridge building. All the characters are clapping, everyone's getting on board, everyone's like knows Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman's back, it's great. And, her making the mask from scratch, that was fantastic. So there's really some epic, nice moments. I think all the action sequences, I think all the fights and the gunplay is really well handled and really fantastic. Definitely the same level, definitely the same creativity in terms of using the practical effects, using the rooms, using the kind of the epic buildings, the epic shots, epic wire work, backflips and stuff. Crazy kind of, body horror and like explosion darts and stuff. So the weapons, the fights, the choreographed stuff is fantastic. There is sparingly used in the film, but when it does show up, it's very well done, it's very well handled. I would give a lot of credit to Johnnie Too to make a very different type of movie and to do not the same thing twice. He made two films back to back, and he deliberately made two separate, very different movies, which, man props to that. And, he took a risk, and, for some people it didn't really pay off, and it's kind of like a forgotten movie on the kind of DVD kind of market. And thanks to kind of Criterion doing the kind of the double pack, I believe, I think this will get a brand new kind of light of day with the 4K transfer, and hopefully the extended cut, because I think there is an extended cut out there, which maybe had a little bit more to the film, maybe it will bring a little more light to what the film has to offer. Especially with the kind of the original kind of language as well, which always will help in terms of kind of translating those kind of dialogue sequences for sure. I think it's a damn shame there's no third entry in this series also. I think it would have been nice to have one more entry to kind of like wrap it up and finish it off, and to kind of see where these characters go. Maybe the little girl can be part of the heroes trio, maybe the next generation of heroes trios, where you got the kind of the old crew as well, which is interesting. So there's definitely potential for another entry in this series for sure. That's my thoughts and opinions on the Executioners. Hope you enjoy watching this review, guys. Please comment down below with your thoughts and opinions. In the meantime, I have reviews.